addition to going to a lot of great parties over the years at Kathleen's house, I'm going to give you the hard facts here. After studying in Chinatown and Hong Kong, she co-founded the first legal acupuncture clinic in the country at UCLA in 1972. She regularly holds workshops where she shares practical tips on self-care, inflammation reduction, and enhanced mental clarity. The audience can experience the electromagnetic field stimulator for dramatic changes in the cellular metabolic optimization, i.e. pain relief and flexibility. Her PhD thesis from University of Connecticut was published by Sunny Press as a psychic spiritual French surrealist writer. René Dumas, The Life and Work of a Mystic Guide, also published in Paris. It's another book that Kathleen wrote. His translations of ancient Hindu texts revealed great insights into the mind and body health. As a musician and painter, she also used these molecules in the healing process. She has studied with Carlos Castaneda and often visits her son's family in Tulum, Mexico, where the shamanic energy is still alive. So I'm sure there's a lot more. Why don't you fill us in, Kathleen?
Thank you, Samuel. Well, that gives a little of my history. And am I speaking loud enough? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, you're good.
So this morning, of course, I want to put a lot of things in at once, and it's going to be interesting to see how much we can cover. I think that it's what I'd like to do is pull two parts of my life together, which is all my healing and spiritual work, and then this book that I've written about music and how it really is celebrating our generation. I think you were all around in the 60s. I was around in the 50s too. So I'm talking a lot about the transition between the 50s and the 60s. And when Neil Young says that, my changes were there back in Ontario, Canada, I know what he's talking about. The changes that we went through from very conventional upbringing and coming out of the war, and then all of a sudden, all this new energy. So I'll get back to that. But I think it comes together in talking about boomers, elder boomers now. And what is our role in life? Did we get a special surge from the 60s that carries on today? Are we still more alive? I mean, when they see the protesters out in the sidewalks, they're usually white-haired people. And I think a lot of things are still going on. And just hearing, I missed some of what you were sharing. I wanted to be here earlier, but my alarm didn't go off. But just to see what you're all doing still. I mean, this is a perfect group. This is like, talking to the choir, because you're all doing wonderful things. And I wish I'd heard the meditation, because that's such an important thing of checking out, getting out of our persona on a regular basis and getting into this wonderful place, anonymous place, where we're no longer just tied to our name and tied to our story and tied to the role we're playing in this movie, but we get to have quality time with ourselves, where just let it go, a lot of the stories, and just really be in a space where we are an egg with luminous liquidy bubbles, because every cell is a liquidy bubble, of mostly just energy. So when we get to be in that energy body for a few minutes every day, and hope ideally a few times through the day, we get to stay in a space that has a baseline of much more peace and tranquility and energy and feel good opiates, because we're actually designed to be feeling so good. And I will just share a little bit about that right now, that we have approximately 70 trillion cells. Sometimes it's, some people say, oh, no, it's 100 trillion cells. Well, every one of them has 100 receptor sites for feel-good opiates. So that means 70 trillion times 100. What is that? 7 zillion, I think. Really good as a baseline. Now, the feeling good is just the side effect. The real point of it is that we are centering, we're focusing, but also that it helps our body, it helps our self, our health, so that we're optimally functioning as good citizens of the planet. And that is what nature wants us. She wants us to be good citizens of the planet. So if we're feeling good, if we've been focusing our energy to be, connecting with all these cells, and each one of them has a little intelligence, a little brain, so that once we start really feeling those cells, we can feel all these brains throughout our whole body. And that's good news, to be able to do that. So, but we're everything works better. Our pancreas and our heart and our kidneys and our adrenals, everything works better when we're pumping these feel-good opiates through our bodies. So there's no downside except cutting out from life, what we consider life, all these worries and, appointments and everything, just cutting out from that for a few minutes and feeling this wonderful world that's interior. So I'm so glad that you have a wonderful meditation, and even that the Tao Te Ching was wonderful few minutes there too. So naturally we're limited with visuals here, but I try to bring as many little tools and toys to share with you today. And I like to share a little bit about the fact that there is a science in acupuncture, because a lot of people just don't hear about the science. They just think, oh, it's just, a little woo-woo, and oh, if you believe it, it's going to work. And, they're just doing these points on the skin, and it doesn't make any sense. So I don't expect you to remember the science necessarily, but I want you to be exposed to it very briefly. And this is this wonderful thing called the law of 5 elements. Now, what that is about is the 5 solid organs, the 5 yin organs that are the most important ones. And then each one has a tube organ next to it. So it's kind of like a sister brother. And some of them are very obvious, like the kidney's bladder. The kidney is the solid organ, and the bladder's the tube. And this one is obvious, the liver gallbladder. The liver gallbladder, they're right next to each other. They work very closely together. The liver's the solid organ, more important. The gallbladder, people have their gallbladders removed. It's not good, but they think that it's okay. The tube. Okay, now there's an order of these 5 yin solid organs: the heart, the pancreas, the lungs, the kidneys, the liver. And they go in this order. They feed each other, so that the heart is the mother of the pancreas. The pancreas is the mother of the lungs. The lungs feeds the kidneys. The kidneys feed the liver. The liver feeds the heart. So it's kind of cool, Now, this is completely unknown in Western medicine. In Western medicine, you're mostly just following, the order of how the food goes through your body, and so it's just sort of like the plumbing, the meat and potatoes. And even though we talk about nuclear energy and electricity and magnetism in other domains, we rarely talk about it in medicine, about the electromagnetic aspect of things. We talk about EKGs and EEGs. So that's all measuring the magnetism of the brain and the heart. And that's one place where they talk about electromagnetic energy. And the heart is the biggest one. The more electromagnetic energy comes out of the heart, So when you see a picture of Jesus with all this energy flowing out of his heart, we all have that energy flowing out of our hearts, and we all have it coming out of our hands. And and then we talk about MRIs, magnetic resonance. Magnetic resonance is using magnetism for diagnosis. But I have this machine here that I'll lift up in a moment that is treating with electromagnetic energy, treating the fact that every cell is a little electromagnetic tube, and every pore of the cell is a socket. But these sockets get caramelized with sugars and proteins as we age, so they get dulled. They're not firing. So when a young person has surgery, they just flip right through it. They just, it's real fast because everything's kind of firing on their bodies. But as we get older, these things are not firing so good, you know. And it doesn't matter whether it's the brain or what part of the body, the low back or the pain or the inflammation. So anyways, we'll get to that again as well. But these are,
Kathleen,
yes.
if I could just add just a moment here, since you don't have, a share screen or whatever.
Oh,
If people want to see you better, they can go to the upper right, and then there's the dots, and just under those, you can pin her, and that way she'll fill your whole screen. And when you hold these things up, the signs and what you're going to show us next, then everybody can see it clearly. Just in case people weren't aware of it. That's all.
I've done lots of PowerPoints, but I'm very not techie. I'm always 5 years behind. So I would need help to get the PowerPoint going. What's funny about these charts that I have here these are things I made in the 80s when I used to give a lot of talks to the Rotary and the Lions Club and the Chamber of Commerce. And, there was nothing around in the 80s. I mean, we kind of invented it. We kind of brought acupuncture to this country. So, I just thought I meant to say that these are really, really old charts that I've got here talking about the tongue next, and I made them. So, but I don't hear anything.
I think you
Oh,
froze for a second there.
okay. All right. Okay. I think this, so, okay. So I hope you can see this better now. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just wanted to show you that, for instance, if there's too much energy in the stomach and we call it heartburn, there's just too much, heat. Well, there's points that will pull that energy down to the lungs and the large intestine, so that suddenly your lungs are stronger, your colon is better, and your heartburn has come down. So we've moved the energy that was excessive here to where it was deficient here. So that when you can do these movements, where, if your kidneys start to fail because your lungs are bad, so then all of a sudden the lungs are not feeding the kidneys, or the kidneys are not feeding the liver. So I don't expect you to remember this. I just want you to know that this exists, and it's incredible how there's certain points that will manipulate this energy around so that people don't necessarily have to bring in a new energy. We just have to find where's the excesses and where are the deficiencies. I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of the tongue. The tongue is very, very important. I've taken hours and hours of webinars on tongues because the tongue is a diagnostic tool. I have so many pictures of tongues on my phone, getting people to take a picture of their tongue, and then underneath the tongue, also very important. And the tongue, briefly, again, this is a chart I made, 40 years ago, showing where, you look at the tongue, and if it's red along the sides, that means problems with the liver and the gallbladder. If it's very red at the tip, which is very common, is the nervous system and the emotions. So when you have a really red tip, that shows that you're struggling emotionally. You're not dealing with things too good. And I have a little red on my tip. Everyone's got a little red on their tip these days. Line down the middle, like here's the crack down the middle. A lot of people have that, where their stomach and their internal organs are just getting too dried out. and especially the stomach. We're dealing with a lot of food coming in and we're not eating very good. Then if there's dots on your skin, that means there's excess heat in your blood. And then back here, I didn't know about leaky gut in those days, but when you get little bumps and depleted skin here, that's leaky gut. And that is super common. I mean, almost everyone has leaky gut. Now, leaky gut means that the intestines have one cell thick lining. And then the mortar around each one of these little cells, like the little mortar around the bricks, gets atrophied so that things get into your bloodstream when they're not supposed to get in, even good things. It's too soon for them to be getting into the blood. So that's leaky gut, when your gut is leaking into your bloodstream. And that causes so many different problems, from brain fog to depression to inflammation to intestinal problems, obvious intestinal problems, to all kinds of problems. So, getting the leaky gut fixed, getting those cells to be stronger is really an important thing. So I showed you those two things. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of the ear. Now, you might see behind me is a beautiful chart that I'm just going to show you quickly. I don't know how much of this is going to show up, but we'll see. You can see these two ears, they're taken because one shows the legs and the limbs and the spine, and then this one shows all the internal organs, so that you can treat points for any place in the body on the ear. But the ear is particularly important for mental and emotional things, because the ear is an outcropping of the brain. It's just like having a screen or a type, a keyboard for the brain. And it's just amazing what you can see. And here they're showing how it's kind of like a baby upside down, so that the head is the brain. I mean, the lobe is the brain. And then, the internal organs are here. So I just wanted to show you that. So one of the major things that I try to talk about is this, that your body can heal your mind just as much as the mind heals the body. We certainly know that our mental state affects our health, and that is always true. But the body can affect the mind. In other words, by working on the body, you can help the emotions immediately. I mean, first of all, to think that in every cell of our body, there's a little emotional center. So getting back to the idea of meditation helps the mind, and you've probably all experienced that. But my particular form of meditation that I actually forgot to bring that out. I had CDs, and I still have CDs in an MP3 called cellular meditation, trying to meditate with all the brains of your body, not just the big brain, because the big brain's so connected to our ego and our story and our persona. But these cells are a little bit smarter. They're just not quite so attached to our story. So when you can meditate with your whole body, and it gives a place for the brain to go, because the mind needs something always. So that's why it's always jumping around. Whereas if it can really sink into the body, suddenly you've got this anchor, you've got a grounding, so that your mind has something to do, to just follow the breath. And that's an important thing. But the idea that even this, every one of these is connected to a certain emotion. The pancreas, overthinking, being obsessive about things, overthinking. The lungs, sadness, grief, melancholy. When you have weak lungs, you tend to cry easily. The kidney bladder is fear. And this gets weak on everyone as we get older. So that sort of explains why older people are kind of afraid to leave the house. They are more fearful because their kidney bladder is kind of the weakest link. The liver, gallbladder, anger and depression, wanting to put your fist through the wall, small intestine, just overexcitement, overstimulation. So that's not as critical as these other ones here. So the idea that when you treat this with acupuncture or with whatever modality, and you're helping the body, it really does not just make you feel better because I don't hurt anymore, but it really is helping the mind and helping the emotions. So those are examples of how really is a give and take when we say holistic. I always say that I specialize in anxiety and depression while I'm working on the backaches and headaches. And when people realize that the word respiration means re-spiriting, that's where the word came from. And the word psyche means breath. Now we've heard the word psyche means soul for the Greeks. Well, that's true too. So you can see the connection between psyche and soul and breath and respiriting, spirit. So these are all these words that describe our internal self, besides the organs and the blood. We've got this energy, this chi that fills the universe. And when it's always there, but when we really deliberately pull it in, we get a lot more. We get like a higher octane breath. So I wanted to show you a little bit more about some of the points on the ear. Here are just some of the important points for metabolism and oral. This would be for overeating, you're trying to lose weight. Here's a hunger point and oral fixation, appetite control, relaxation. These are just some of the points that would treat. This was like another picture of the ear from that point of view. And then here's another one I made in those days. Again, insomnia, helping the eyes, the internal organs, relaxation, allergy point. So you can just see some of these little things. Now, this is something that I made years ago about smoking. Now, we rarely even see anyone in LA that smokes anymore. I've said that 30 years ago, and it's still kind of true. But boy, you go to other parts of the country or other countries. And so this is a quick understanding of how acupuncture helps smoking, because we have these endorphins in our body. And if you're a normal person that doesn't smoke, they're pretty regular. We could always use more. We talked about that. We want to get those 7 zillion receptor sites going. Okay, but if you're a smoker, then your endorphins are dependent on that hit of nicotine. So let's say here's before, and then you're kind of low. This is normal here. So this is a person who smokes, so their endorphin levels are low. Then they have that hit of nicotine, and it goes way up, but then it shoots way down again, and that's the signal that, oh, I need a cigarette. Where's the cigarette? Because it's way down. What acupuncture does is, by going into the ear, there are points that can normalize the endorphins again, so that they just stay more or less normal. So that's why acupuncture will work for smoking, because you can actually go into the brain and reset their endorphins. So that's just good news if you still know of anyone. In other words, they don't have to go on forever feeling deprived. And sometimes you'll see people who gave up 10 years ago and they still crave a cigarette because their endorphins never did get normalized. So that's just an example of how you can make people just feel better. And acupuncture generally does that. I've been doing this for 55 years now or something like that, 53 years. And I would always see how acupuncture just kind of it just made people feel better in general. Not only did they get their back feel better, and it's just amazed me seeing these dramatic miracles that would happen when you're dealing with these lines of energy. And the talk that I generally give is called the Human Electromagnetic Laser Body, because all the meridians, and I don't know if you can see this man, I'll bring him over too for a minute. This is a statue. Oh, a little heavy, but you can see the lines of energy on him. Hello. You can see these lines, these meridians. Now, these meridians we deal with are just the ones that go along the surface of the skin. I'm going to put him back. So these lines of energy have all the characteristics of a laser beam. That's what they are. They're laser beams. We have laser beams in our body, and we get short circuits in these laser beams. this electromagnetic energy that's every cell. But we get all these short circuits. And when you think about it, how long we've lived, all these decades of thinking the same way, living with the same brain and repeating the same thoughts a lot. We just, how can we help it? After all, that's a lot of years to live with that brain and to live with this body. And so a lot of things get very, very solidified, shall we say, frozen, petrified, like petrified wood. And I see a lot of bodies that are kind of like petrified wood. And often the very first thing I have to do is to kind of open up the body. And it's usually with some of these massage tools. That's the first thing I use. And I've used this for years. Just 2 massage tools, because, opening up the body, getting it to buzz. Because after all, I do a lot of hand massage too as part of the treatment. But my hands can't do what those things do, and they can't do what my hands do. They're 2 different things, but they're both important. And to get people to relax, to really, really relax. And lately I've been using this massage tool, which is fabulous. It's incredible. It's so strong and it gets hot. So it feels really good. And, I try to use it on myself, and so that's an important part of it. A lot of us have not been touched in years. I mean, I get a lot of people that say, "Oh, I went to the doctor for my shoulder, but he never touched it." Well, nowadays the doctor's looking at his screen. He's not even looking at the shoulder, let alone touching it. And so just to get things worked on and touched is so important. So I find that the massage is very, very important. But then finding out, where is, really digging in there. And then one of the most popular things that I do on every patient is called gua sha, or cupping. Now, you've probably all heard of cupping. We live in LA. We got the best information, in a way about these things at any place. But the gua sha is so important because we all connect, and I say we all have 12-pound bowling balls, first of all. And when it's over a screen, it's more like 20 pounds. So these muscles work so hard to hold this thing up. And, good posture went out a long time ago. Maybe some of us had it as children, but nowadays the young people just think it's cool to walk around like they're cavemen. And they're looking at, now they got this down here to look at. I mean, they will keep me in business forever because no one is carrying their head back here and using the front to hold themselves up. We're all, like this, or like this. So this is really important. And I brought this out just to suggest, and I don't use it as, I don't always take my own advice, but when I lie on this thing, it's such a shock to see how tight. And you got to put it here, and you got to put it here and here. There's so many places that we're tight, right on the pelvis, and here, and here. And I can't underline how important that is. Now, I don't even know where this thing came from, but it's way too long, but it really is good. But you can substitute the arm of a couch or some pillows on your bed. But I can't think of anything more important for us at our age than that, because nature and life is just making us bend. And once you start bending, you're going to continue to bend. And there's nothing more aging than that. It looks aged. It is aged. My dad, bless him, I said, "Dad, you could put a tea tray on your back. You're so bent over." He says, "Oh, well, old men are allowed to do that." It's like, that was his generation. He felt it's time to be an old man. But we really have to fight against that, because not only are those muscles holding up this bowling ball, but these muscles in here start to pull in. So you're getting pulled in here, and your shoulders are trying to carry this thing around. So it's really important to, massage here and open this up. It's always a little tender, and just to really force these back. And I have bought many of these little back supports for my patients. And it's not that they're strong enough to really keep your shoulders back, but they nudge you. They annoy you. They just nudge you enough to cooperate. And so if you wear it for an hour or 2 a day, that's enough to kind of build these muscles in front, because something has to hold this up. And so you're holding it up from the front. You're taller, you're more elegant, you're more dignified. So I say, let vanity work for you. Keep it, and then when you take it off, part of you wants to just give in, but there's also part that the stomach liked having some muscles. Remember when muscles felt good when we were kids? We wanted to just run around all the time, just wanted our muscles to work. It felt so good, or to dance. I mean, luckily I still have friends who are all danceaholics. We just want to dance all the time. And, that's the best exercise of all, because walking is the same move over and over. And it's great this way, and getting your legs. But dance throughout the day and get your legs up, because, the legs, the hips have the ability to put your legs in every direction. And who does that? Football players, karate experts, or ballerinas, or maybe skiing if you're, but then we get hip replacements because no one did that. No one used their hip to the full extent. About 15 years ago, I started doing it when I brushed my teeth. So at least I did that, because it's
Well, she's frozen again. I'm sure she'll be back with us in a moment or two.
We should all get up and be moving our legs.
I know. We have in our midst actually a football player and a karate expert, among others.
I've taken to about a quarter of my time standing in front of Zoom, and I can, unseen, I can do my legs and my arms, and while listening to Zoom. And I notice a big difference in my spine in standing straighter and not being tired. Highly recommend it.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks, Afton.
Yeah, thank you.
What? Oh, I should use my camera.
I'm not seeing Kathleen, so she may have had some tech problems there. But you know what?
I don't see her either, Bill.
Till she comes back, why don't we just talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, right. Good idea.
I think I'm back. Am I back? I don't know what happened.
You're back.
You're back. You're back.
Right. So these are all things that we can do, easily incorporate into our life. Because who has the time? I mean, some people take much more time than I do, but I'm finding now that I need to go to the gym. I mean, before it was like an option. Now I feel like I just have to move my body.
Yeah.
And once it starts, it feels good. You'll remember what it felt like before they knocked it out of us and made us sit in school for 5 hours or however. We got to get that energy back. So I tell people, do something, get out of your chair for 5 minutes every hour. It's great to go to the gym in the morning, but then if you're going to sit for many, many hours, that's good. But then add that 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I'll say, every time you go to the restroom, let that be an alarm clock to either do some jumping jacks or some squats, or at least take a breath and check out from the movie, but use it as an alarm clock. Or every time a stop sign, just take a breath, and just come back to yourself, or in the car, keep a pillow. I keep a pillow, and I'll just put it between my legs and just kind of squeeze while I'm driving, and maybe there's music. And it's amazing how much you can move your hips all the way around the inner thighs. And it's not taking away from my attention at all. And yet, when I get out of the car, I'm not quite so stiff, and I can move. And, since we're sitting in our cars a lot in LA, this is a great, great addition. Just, keep it next to you, keep it under the seat, and just, use it because we have to grab these moments. Life is getting shorter and shorter. We're spending more time on getting our passcode and all this stupid stuff that makes me crazy. And so we got to grab these moments, kick when you brush your teeth, put a pillow in your car, just some of these extra things. Now, let me stop and ask if there's any questions, because there's so many different directions that I could go in, and I'm happy to answer anything that is coming up. Does anyone? Yes? I don't hear anything.
So Kathleen, this is Ruth. I have a question for you. Thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate these wonderful reminders. I bought a few years ago something to put around my legs when I was sitting to keep my back straight. But I found after a while, I just, put it aside. And now you mentioned again about for the back, because I am working on my posture. I am really being more conscious of it than ever. But do you find that it really makes long-term a difference, or is it just more raising your consciousness about yourself?
Well, all of that is true. I mean, we have to raise our consciousness and turn on the endorphins and just feel good. And I tell people your duty is to feel good. Now, I was raised to always be a little concerned about something. I was raised Catholic, so I got a lot of guilt and a lot of, but we have to realize that no, we don't have to suffer for other people. We have to feel good and send them love and send them energy from our feeling good place. And that is our duty, and not being concerned about something at every moment. So feeling good is important, but doing these exercises and supporting our posture, like I always have to have a pillow in the small of my back, in my car, wherever I go. If I'm going out, I'll take a sweater, because I can't walk around with a pillow, but I can walk around with an extra sweater and stick it in my back. I have to have something there or my back hurts. And then in my car, I got one of those neck pillows, and I feel that that's somewhat of an insurance policy, but it also just supports my neck, because otherwise my head is hitting, and so I find that pillows are really important. And so use the pillow and use anything that you can to keep straighter.
I have my pillow behind my back.
Yeah, right. This is a heavy item here.
I know. One other thing, what would you say about restorative yoga? I've been hearing more and more about classes that are for people who are aging, who can't do the positions that we used to do, on
Yes,
our knees and so on.
fabulous. Absolutely. But I also, the yoga is important, but also I think dance. Dance, if you say, "Oh, I can't dance," then it's even more fun. You get to laugh at yourself. Dance in the kitchen. I'd say I've danced in my kitchen, that's where I did most of my dancing in my life, the refrigerator door, or whatever, whatever, the swing dancing or tap dancing or, whatever it was as a kid. Just, I love to dance. So granted, it's great if you love to dance, but do it anyways. Yes? Yes. Whoever wants to talk, just go ahead. I can't hear it.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I do squats when I'm brushing my teeth or do the dishes. Yes. And thank God I have stairs at home, so I have to go up and down. They're ready, and I love to dance. So, and I go dancing in my car when I have the music. I'm sitting there and dancing.
Right.
And but let me ask you something. What about dopamine addiction? That is now with a phone, it's easy to become prey of dopamine addiction. So I was wondering, acupuncture helps?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we all need dopamine and we all get it, but sometimes if you try too hard to get too much today, then you have less tomorrow. And so, we have to, feeling good is certainly a natural thing. And if we can realize how good meditation makes us feel, so that it's, oh, I have to meditate now. No, I get to meditate. I get to feel bliss. And so finding the dopamine that way, otherwise, I go for comfort food, and I I get off of it, and then all of a sudden I realize, oh, here I'm having another scone, you know. And so we get our dopamine from food, and that's even the worst. But realizing that there's natural dopamine in my body, it's something God has given me, and to treasure it and to, realize that I can increase my dopamine by being present, just, really just taking a deep breath, breathing and enjoying the breath and realizing how delicious the breath is when I'm with it. It's like the breath is the magic carpet. So when you realize that your mind can travel on this magic carpet through the whole body.
Thank you.
Kathleen, I wanted to ask, is it possible we could work on ourselves with the points in our ears?
Yes, yes, definitely. I mean, just taking your, just massaging your ear, finding where is there tender points. Like for instance, this is where the neck is, because see, this is the spine, and then this is the neck attaching to the lobe. I have a little lobe, but right in here, I have a lot of tenderness because my neck is, I inherited my mother's neck, and it's just always tight because I don't do my posture enough. And so I just rub that, and that helps my neck. But now you can take, a pen that it doesn't have ink, just without, yeah, that's closed. So just go around and see what is tender and stimulate your ear, even if you don't know exactly what you're hitting. Just know that if it's tender, you're helping something. I mean, I'm going to do a workshop at my house on June 7th, which is the Saturday after this one coming up. This weekend, I'm going out to the UFO conference out in the desert for the 7th time. And I even lectured there once my talk was called Terrestrials and Their Electromagnetic Laser Bodies. But the Saturday after, I'm going to do a workshop at my home here in Beverly Glen Canyon in Bel Air. And it's from 1 to 4 or however long we need. And so you're all invited. And I can let you know my address or my email. Well, I guess you maybe have my email, which is Dr. Kathleen Rosenblatt at Gmail, Dr. Kathleen Rosenblatt at gmail.com. And so I would love for you to come because I'm in a really pretty spot here. I just have one house next to me and all this property around me that is not mine, but it's there, acres of trees in this HMO, HOA. HOA. And so it's a nice setting. It's a nice green area, and it's a nice place and I have a nice thick green wool rug, so it's cushy on the floor. So anyways, I find that just using this here to turn on any points, and also I love to suggest that like in the morning when you're putting water on your face, and now just take your towel and really rub your ears. And that feels so good to start the day with just really rubbing the ears, or, just going like this even as well, but even just with a towel. And then at night, when I go to bed, I like to just take some water from the sink and just put water on my scalp. And even just doing it right now, I can feel little goosebumps, the tightness in the scalp, especially at the back where it is holding everything up. And so I'll just take that water, and it just feels good on the scalp, kind of gives my hair a little more body, and it just feels really good. So these are just sort of simple things because the scalp is, I mean, I find that sometimes if I'm getting a foot massage or, on my legs, all of a sudden my scalp will start having goosebumps because it's so connected to everything else. And so just massaging the toes, all of a sudden my scalp is like having goosebumps. So it's just an example of how tight everything is around our head. And when you think about the face being the front of this computer and all these organs, I mean, when you look in someone's eyes, you are really seeing their brain. And in fact, literally, the only cell that's visible is the pupil of the eye. So I can't look in my own except through a mirror, but I can look in, every one of us can look in someone's eyes, and that pupil is actually a nerve of their brain. But then the eyes, we all know that, but sometimes people just don't really look in the eyes. It's like too intrusive or something. But lately, I've just been really realizing how I haven't done that enough in my life and how exciting that is. But then the nose and smells goes right to the brain, all the smells that bring back memories, or the ears, how important the ears are is out. And then the mouth, the tongue is an internal organ. It goes way down and it developed from the same node as the heart, so that the heart and the tongue were connected embryologically. And so you just see how important all these parts are, how exciting that is to appreciate and to relish this. But I think that getting back to the idea of where we are now, to really celebrate our third 30 and what does come with being older. I consider it, in my book, I say this, that we're like tree rings. We're like a tree where every year was another ring. And so when we say, oh, I can remember being 8 or I can remember being 20, well, that ring is still in you. Your 8-year-old is still there, and your 20-year-old and your 35-year-old. And so some years were fatter than others, just like, with trees, when there's a lot of rain, it's a fatter ring. And when it's, like the Ice Age, the little Ice Age in the 1500s is when the Stradivarius violin was made, because it was so cold, the rings were very tight. So it made the wood even more dense and more special for playing violin. But in other words, those years when we were 18 or 19, those were special years when we were pulling in all this great music and these great experiences. And it was very intellectual back then. That's what people don't really realize, that the 60s weren't just, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, I really cared about philosophers, and I cared about all these things, and I cared about social issues. I did go marching in Washington, and that was all very intense. And so we had that intensity. How much of it do we still have now? I mean, we don't have to have the same intensity, but we have a softer, milder, more wise intensity from having gone around the sun that many times and have all these tree rings in our body. I mean, when I get to be with my grandchildren and they're 3 and 4, I get to be 8. I mean, that really does revive my 8-year-old. And I think that we can celebrate all the rings of our life, but the ones that are happening right now is very important. And to really, be thinking, what should I be creating, or what should I be resolving, or what should I be gathering in, or what should I be helping younger people? All these things, we're mediators, we're mentors, I forget the other M. There is another one, miracle workers.
Thank you, Kathleen. That's beautiful. We got a couple minutes left if you want to just kind of wrap up.
Okay. Well, I just think that it's just exciting to realize we have these bodies. It's the same body. We've been in the same car for, 70 years. And we got to see, what can I do to keep this old Mercedes going? It's an old car. It's vintage, but there's lots I can do. I don't have to just throw the towel in, as many people of our generation have done. Like, oh, I'm old. I think sex is important. If you can get some sex, that's really a good one, that gets the hormones moving all through. I did one talk at the Conscious Life Expo called Health for Sex, Sex for Health. I mean, but whatever, helping others, being a mentor, being a volunteer, all these things will keep us going. But physical movement, very, very important, and meditation. So thank you. My website is called brainbodybliss.com. And my book website is called youthplanet60sbook.com. It's 2 books, and they're about to come out, or one of it is on its way.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Could you put that in the chat, please?
Yes, I will do that.
Then we those links if you got.
Yes. Okay. Let me see it.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. Thank you very much, Kathleen.
All right. It was very fun. Good to see you all.
Yes. Beautiful. So it's time now for business, and